Rader, do you desire to say anything on your own behalf in mitigation of punishment?
Your Honor, Sedgwick County, the victims, I do realize that the crimes have committed. Okay. The atrocious crimes that committed has continued as the Sedgwick County is a monster. It brought the community, my family, the victims, dishonor. And it's all self-centered, as what you could call, I would call a sexual predator. Today is my final judgment. For me, the last couple of days in court, presented by the state, their PowerPoint presentation was very powerful. A couple of things I might point out toward the last, but overall, most of that was true. And I think the Sedgwick County ought to be proud that they do have a good state, that the evidence was there earlier, the DNA, the floppy. There was no way that I was going to get out of this. With remorse, responsibility, and corrections are the concepts of apology. The old me started whatever was Factor X, sexual predator. The volcano was the building of all those years was the Otero. And probably the most devastating and upsetting, let me tell everybody, is Josephine. I just don't know. Self-centered, very selfish, and it exploded on that day. And it did continue, off and on. Dishonesty? Definitely. Dishonesty, probably the first thing to the people that I encountered, that they trusted me that I was going to tie them up, take their money, and leave. And then I killed them. That's dishonesty to my family. Lie and cheat to be self-interest to my employers and to the county, the taxpayers' money. Pride and responsibility. Yes, I had pride back then. To some degree, I'm trying to drop down to that, but that's the media. They seem to crave the attention of the media. I think through the years that's quite presentation during the presentation and all the archives that I had, you can understand that. I think the bottom line of the old is selfish, very just associated with society, self-centered for my own purposes, and I take that full burden on my shoulders. Victims. I wrote some notes down. I don't know if this is really appropriate or not. And these things a lot of these came out of paper because I knew the people. You all know why I chose them. But I thought I'd share some things. Kathleen Bright. And I hope I don't tread on the media because I did use some of this from the media because I didn't know this much from people. She spent time on her grandparents' farm. Well, I did too, as a kid. I have many, many, many fond memories of that, and I took that from her. She went to Valley Center. I was at Valley Center High School for 2 years there. Walked the halls, probably at the same line. Shared maybe the same teachers, although they would have been older. She worked at Coleman, just like I did, trying to fill a job, as anybody would. Try to keep, our heads above water, and I took that from her. Dolores Davis, she loved animals, and I worked with animal control. I realized that in the early years, I probably did have some cruelty to animals. But I don't think, if anybody asked Park City or anything, they would say I was always pretty good at animals. I have a great fondness for animals. I have pets, but I know she had it. And I read somewhere she had her last Christmas with her family. And I did too. That was a wonderful time. I took that from her. Nancy Fox, she was a wonderful person, and I did track her just like a predator. She was a wonderful young lady, well organized, hard worker, and I took her life. Maria Hedge, she was a neighbor. One I walked by, waved to, a gardener. I loved to garden flowers. She attended church, the same church I'd been to with the Boy Scouts. Joseph Luttrell was in the Air Force. I was in the Air Force. He was a husband. I was a husband. Although I always wanted to be a pilot, I always had a fascination with aerodynamics. And he was a pilot. One time I even thought about taking pilot lessons. And a veteran. I was a veteran. So our threads are close. Julie Otero was a lot like my wife, a loving mother. Raised kids. And she also worked at Coleman. Josephine. She would have been a lot like my daughter at that age. Played with her Barbie dolls. She liked to write poetry. I liked to write poetry. She liked to draw. I liked to draw. Someone mentioned that she was like peas in a pod. And I think that probably comes to Wichita Eagle Peak, and write that down. Give it credit to them. Joseph Earl, too. He was just like me at one time, a boy and a dog. And again, that comes from the Eagle. And many memories of the dog. Excuse me. Anyway, I had a lot of memories as a kid with one of my pets. A boy and a dog is a thing you have to have when you're a kid. Shirley, she was choir, mother, probably a very beloved mother, and I took her life. Probably of all the people, I didn't know Vicki Vian very much, although I walk by her place and can listen to the piano. I appreciate music. That's one thing I always wanted to learn was piano. And I took her life. She's also a beloved mother. She attended a church that I went to once, St. Andrews. I hope I haven't left somebody out on that. Okay, to rebuild humility. Basically humbled myself now. The detention center I'm going to. I've tried to realize, work with the police department, work with my defense, and tried to realize my faults. Honesty. Again, I think I cooperated with the police as well. I did. I understand there was some smoke blowing, and that was probably my demise. The afterlife, the smoke. The thing about J.K. Allen was smoke. BTK story early. Parts of it were smoke. The problem is I did blew so much smoke that now nobody knows facts or fiction. And that's basically my demise. I'd be very honest with my attorneys. We worked very hard. We met almost every day earlier before the plea, somewhat less after that, but it was basically all over. And Steve encouraged me not to go with an early plea so we could do more. They did all the things they could with the floppy. They had an expert come in, go over the floppy to see whether there was any problems with that. They did extensive research on the DNA. There was a sore spot with me when they took my daughter, but I understand in law enforcement you have to do certain things. And I think, honestly, people will say, I'm not a Christian, but I believe I am. So, anyway, I faced up to the man himself now, my boss. I think that all points to accountability and full responsibility now. And my remorse, well, I think it's here. You know, the victims' families won't ever be able to forgive me. But, I hope somewhere deep down, eventually, that'll happen. When this happened, I was, what I would say, not a total in one time. Part of me, only the thoughts that compartmentalized. That is probably, as the stage show started to show today, was a compartmentalization of me. And that has been my biggest wreck. Flip back and forth. I'm not proud of that. It's just, it was this escape mechanism, defense mechanism. I could switch back and forth fairly fast. I explained to the defense I was kind of like an 18-wheeler. Either uphill or downhill, I could switch gears very fast and rapidly. Back and forth. And as I stand here in this humble way, there may be people think that I've done that, gone back to compartmentalize, but I don't think so. So anyway, it has given me the faith to see today and not things to pass. Corrections. This is the full responsibility. I'm going to the penal institution, full board, and I do not expect anything but the hard 40 today. I expected that on the plea. That's why I stepped up to the plea. I knew after I talked to police, the evidence, there wasn't any way I was really going to get out of this unless we found some way of some evidence that was just totally out of it. And the trial would have been a long, drawn-out to the plea. There was no way that I was ever going to get out of this. I think the corrections, I'm away from society now. I'll do my healing process there as well as I can and start my new chapter in life. And I suppose in all good time, as Rader, everybody knows Rader has to complain a little bit, so I would like to do some minor ones. Not because I want to complain today, but I want to set the record. This is my last time. Probably the biggest problem I have right now, and we're still trying to answer, is what happened to Mendoza. I had a trust with that person, a psychiatrist. The defense was working on it. I know other people were working on it. That was I just don't know what happened. And maybe that'll happen. Another one is and I'm just basically expressing this. I don't have control on it, but I wish somebody would take part to is the lien on the house. The final victim, as Mr. Davis said, is my wife. Excuse me. Excuse me, Jeff. Well, anyway, I'll get back to that. She is my final victim, that and my family. She knew nothing about this, and yet the laws, and I understand it because the lien went on the house, was because I have property. There's a lot of defendants that stand up here don't have anything to go after. I know this is very expensive. Probably the defense is running somewhere $80,000, $90,000. It's just about what the house is sold for. If we won to a trial, it would have been in millions and years. So I just basically ask that whoever does that final judgment, that they think about the wife. The other one is, and not a biggie, it's not this last issue, is that if I'd asked for my wallet so I could get some personal pictures out of it, I was hoping that the defense would have a court order that before I leave today, I can go through that wallet and take some family pictures. But that's not a big issue because I understand through Code of Ethics, the defense will turn that probably over to the family as well as my clothes. So those are the only early complaints, except for PowerPoint. I don't want to pick on the law enforcement. They've done a very good job, but I do want to clarify a few things, just for the records, because this is basically my final say. The first one, there was two actors that were brought out, John Wayne and James Bond. The action of that with Kevin was the shooting, not because I stood up and shot him, because when I was working with the police, that was what I call a quick draw, just like that. And that's what I call the John Wayne shot. It's not that he would do something like that. Secondly, we fought, and for us to fight, he had to have both his hands open. The PowerPoint said that he basically stood up, he was tied, and I shot him, and that's incorrect. He fought, I backed off, he had his hands out, and I shot him again. And again, these are only minor. It does not make any difference. It's probably irrelevant. I just want to set the record straight, and that's all, sir. Ryan, it was, in the PowerPoint, it was perceived that I was strangling Shirley, and I stopped to comfort the kids. That's just the opposite. She or I both put the kids back in the bathroom, comforted them there before we went in, and what happened. So the toys and all that were put in there earlier. Let's basically clarify that on that. My notes. And this is really minor, although it makes you wonder whether the information is tainted or not, the evidence, and what makes you speculate whether law enforcement did do, although they look like they did a good job, whether they did it 100%. The Doris Davis graves, they flip back and forth. Anybody who knows anything about geology, structure, those trees and stuff were not at Lake Cheney. They were over in the eastern part of the United States. So, and those pictures that came in the mail were not the other ones. They were all from the grave site at Cheney. Probably the most damaging to me was the pornography. They displayed, yes, they had pornography of what I drew, but I didn't see where they had a lot of pornography, but they brought two pictures out. Family will know that I didn't own a camper. I had a pickup with a camper top, but it didn't have any shelves in it. So basic evidence was totally tainted. They either picked up a picture from somewhere else or inserted it or didn't realize it. That may have been a relative, I'm not sure. But I would think if they had more pornography, they would have showed it. That's basically the clarifications. The other thing is, with the law enforcement, there seemed to be, I was rated as a dog catcher. I did go to AJ law enforcement. I felt like I did have rapport with the law enforcement people. During the confession, as they probably said in the paper, I'd still probably be talking if a defense person didn't show up. Right? We had a good rapport. I almost felt like they were my buddies. At one time I asked about Lamonian maybe coming in and having a cup of coffee with me. So there was a rapport. I've always had a great respect for law enforcement. Although I wore a black hat instead of a white hat. Thanks. I can't believe the people that have helped me on this. Starting with, I think the youth society have to, even though I'm a criminal, I think you have to appreciate the police department. They've done a lot of work. Even though it took a long time, they gathered evidence, they had that evidence. When they got the key suspect, they zeroed in on it very rapidly. So to have the dedication that, like Mr. Landwehr, for all those years, is great. So I think Sedgwick County really has a good police force. Defense, this has been a unique, probably a different type case that they've ever had. We've had our ups and downs, but mostly they've been good. It's just like a new learning curve. It's just a new curve, and the media has just been terrible. I worked with the media afterwards, and it's just tremendous. And they've done very good. Sarah has probably been my workhorse. I really appreciate her. She's done a lot of good work. Steve, he had to keep heads on all this, and I know that was very hard for him. I want to go ahead, since I worked with defense very close, give them all personal. Make sure I go through the list here. I already mentioned Steve, Sarah McHenlin. Everybody knows Steve. Another one that helped me was Jama Mitchell. I think she's on a case today. Probably, is that correct in El Dorado? Or somewhere over there? Okay. Leanne Starrich, she was a social worker that did a lot of research for me earlier, so I appreciate her helping that. There's Jenny Blind, was a special investigator. And then Jamie Chimer, she's the one that cut my hair and brought my clothes up. So I have they're basically my family, so I appreciate that. On the professional staff, although we had some questions with Robert J. Mendoza and what happened there, I think that time that'll be solved. But I still have to give him credit for coming in and helping me and working with me. And I'm sure, I hope I pronounced that right, it's Tala K. Walters. She was the other doctor that came in. And they were all from Cambridge Forensic Society for consultants. So I really appreciate the defense. They've done a lot for me, kept me advised. Sedgwick County Detention Center. I was really scared when I first came in here. I've never been arrested before. I really didn't know what to look. I was basically 43 days up there in isolation. At first, the officers, patrol officers, they call them deputies down there, pod deputies. They didn't know me, I didn't know them, but they finally opened up and they became human, and I think they realized I was human too. Eventually, I moved over to Pod 2, and that's a very much camaraderie with what I call the Dirty Dozen or the T's in the pod. They were a bunch of great guys. Most of those guys are gone now, but I have a lot of respect. I sit down with them. We're all have crimes, but you basically build a camaraderie with those type people. The people who move me around, I'm what they call, I call it hot peppers or habanero. We wear red. We have the special movers. Again, I hope I pronounce these, from the detention area, I hope I pronounce these people's last names right, and if I leave somebody else, I apologize for that. One I have is Robert Henshaw, Captain Barbara Maxwell, Captain Glenn Kurtz, Lieutenant Larry Braggs, Sergeant. He's my main sergeant. He's the one that's been very, very close with me, worked with me, David Millen, and I have a lot of respect for him. He's been my main sergeant. I'm the judicial, and I'll probably mess up his last name, but it's Daniel Bardensbrand, and I messed that up. I'm sorry. And then it's Brad Paul. There's many, many, many more beyond those. I would be here a long time if I helped. So I do appreciate all those people that helped. Pastor Clark. He has been my main man. He comes see me every day. Or not every day, excuse me. At least once a week, sometimes twice a week. If anybody I was dishonest to, is that man right there. Under the house of God, I created these things, did trust his acts, and for him to stay with me and remain strong, he's a good man. I appreciate that. He also went through me earlier this week. We went through a confession. I sat down and went through each of the people I killed, and we confessed on that. And I felt a strengthening some bonds there at that time with him. Family, the last victims. I don't even want to start with them. They're still supportive a little bit. My wife's gone on, divorced. She's trying to stay out of harm's way. Since my kids are away, I don't get much letters or anything from them, but they're basically supportive. A couple things here. Friends. Without friends, a person, I don't think, in this 175, 176 days, you couldn't survive without friends. If you didn't have family to support you, if you didn't have somebody to come to you, like Pastor Clark, you'd go down. Just mentally, you'd go down. So friends have been a very key part. The people in the pod deputies, sergeant, although they can't have a real friend relationship with their friends. I got this out this morning, or the other day when I was working out. This comes from the Daily Devotions, a Christian book. It's called Touched by a Stranger, which is an article. And at the bottom, there's an article. It's by Hess. There isn't a first name for it. But it's something like a friend would do, and I really appreciate it. Like refreshing rain in the summer, or the gentle breeze in spring. It's just a little gift of kindness, joy someone's hearts can bring. With immediate exposure, my family basically had to almost to stay away, so I really didn't have any support. There was one person that stepped up, Christina Casanova, that really helped. And I really appreciate her support. There's another one that's out on the West Coast, Andy Parshaw. He's another Christian, and I really support. I would have gone down a long time ago without their support, so I do want to mention their names. A Christian Bible verse I found that I think it's helping me, or will help me, and leading me. This is John 8:12. I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have life of light. Now that I've confessed, put myself out to let everybody know what's going on, I expect to heal and to have life. And then hopefully someday God will accept me. I think Central County, myself, we speak of a man as an evil man. The dark side was there, but now I think light is beginning to shine. So I appreciate the family and friends and all I can be thankful for. And I think that will keep me from finally going to the dark side or hell. And finally, I finally apologize to the victims' families. There's no way that I can ever repay them. That's all, sir.
All right, thank you very much. State care to be heard.